Today, our special guest, Nelson Abreu, joins us from Los Angeles. Nelson is an electrical engineer, entrepreneur, inventor, author, and educator. For years, Nelson Abreu has been exploring the intersection of well-being, society, and technology. He has explored extraordinary states, including out-of-body experiences and near-death experiences, facilitated through new technologies and social solutions that can actually facilitate such states. He's developing novel technologies and techniques to induce states of creativity and well-being. As an electrical engineer, he has also championed numerous process improvements for the electrical industry that has created millions of dollars of value and cost savings. Nelson continues to develop novel ways to reduce stress, anxiety, and pain, and to improve creativity, performance, self-knowledge, and intuition. Along with his wife Minori, they operate a Los Angeles-based collaborative studio, pursuing their passions in architecture, design, technology, and well-being. Here's Nelson.
Hello.
Hey, Nelson.
Hey, Nelson.
Hi.
It's Joe Rogan. Just kidding.
Don't scare me.
Are you sitting in your car, or where are you?
Yes, I'm actually at an active construction work site, but I am making myself isolated from various sounds.
Good.
So I can have a good interview with you guys.
Good. So I know.
How are you feeling today?
I am, shaken but not stirred. It's my favorite line from James Bond. How do you like your martini? No, just
That's funny.
So
yay. Here I am.
So Nelson, what? There's Marilynn. So
hi, Marilynn.
Nice to meet you, Nelson.
Nice to meet you.
Been doing this for 30 years or more, on a non-technical basis.
Yeah.
But I think this would be a really cool conversation, and So I mean, Nelson, I don't know. I mean, other than watching a few of your videos, and I think reading one of your papers, I don't know that much about the actual technology that you're working on, and maybe we can explore that in the next hour.
Yeah, and I don't know anything about it, so I'll probably ask whatever I think of. That's okay.
All right. Yeah. That sounds good.
I'll just be sitting here, mixing my martini or something. But real spirits.
Oh yeah.
So maybe we can just start with, I'm recording now, so I can edit all this stuff out. But so just introduce yourselves, and then we can sort of be very organic and fluid about where this takes us. So maybe we'll start with you, Nelson.
All right. So my name is Nelson Abreu, and my background is in electrical engineering. I'm actually talking to you from a transmission station right now. And so I do work with energy for a living, but I also developed an interest in other forms of energy, the more subtle forms of energy. So the human biofield, if you will, and an interest in chi and prana, those sorts of concepts, both in theory and in practice, right? In terms of developing a personal practice of learning how to feel, how to perceive that, and how to use it in my day-to-day life, as well as I've spent about 20 years having transformative states of consciousness, higher states of consciousness, altered states, such as out-of-body experiences, lucid dreams, that period between awake and asleep, the hypnagogic period. So exploring that also from a first-person point of view, but then also studying the science behind it, what kind of research has been done, participating in some studies myself. And finally, in the last years, I've moved from primarily experiencing myself and teaching to also figuring out how to combine my two interests, the technology or application
Hmm.
in the real world with this sort of like inner world of consciousness. So
Wow.
I've been working in this field that some people call internal reality. You know, you have virtual reality, you have augmented reality, mixed reality. So I'm calling it internal reality or consciousness technologies.
Mm.
Others that are calling it transformative tech, right? So basically what happens when you mix design, technology, and well-being, right? And
Hmm.
I've developed a few technologies, innovations in that field, along with my wife and partner, Minori Sumanasinghe.
Hmm.
And we've developed some companies that are working in that space, some new technologies. So that's a little bit about me.
Fascinating.
Yeah,
Well,
very
thank you
interesting.
for plugging Well-Being. My sponsor is going to love you for that. Just kidding. Uh, I have no sponsors, but so Marilynn, I've known Marilynn for a long time. So just
Yes.
introduced yourself, and this is our little platform. And then what? Practical mysticism. But so we've had a few conversations already. But so you're just introduced yourself and your long experience with out of body work.
Yeah, Marilynn Hughes, and I've been an out-of-body traveler since 1987, and I've written about 100 books on the subject, and you can check them all out at outofbodytravel.org. And you can check out, a lot of the things that we've been up to for the last 30 so years there as well. And so, yeah, doing a lot of the same things Nelson's talking about, except for the technology, which I'm very interested in hearing about. So this should be a fun and informative discussion.
Excellent, excellent. So let's just see where this takes us. But maybe you can both talk about and go back and forth on what actually happens when you do out of body travel on a spiritual level, on a physical level, and Nelson, you and I have talked about the amazing opportunities this provides us. It's like we have these supernatural abilities. We have this technology that is very innate to our human being, and yet very few of us have ever explored it. So
Right. I started studying this just sort of on my own, finding books about it and so on. And the thing that caught my attention was the idea that you could explore some of these big questions about the afterlife, the nature of being through the first person perspective. You were not limited to just, a sermon or a book. You can have your own experiences. And as someone who is more pragmatic, that was very appealing to me. So these things don't have to be an article of faith necessarily. They could be explored from a at least first person point of view, but potentially even scientifically, right?
mm-hmm.
And so I developed that interest primarily through two organizations: the International Academy of Consciousness and the International Consciousness Research Laboratories, which used to be the Pear Lab at Princeton. So two different approaches, but IAC primarily, was about, and still is about, teaching people how to have their own experiences. So I went there to learn, and I had already had my first out-of-body experience by then, but then I was able to have more of them more frequently. And a lot of it was learning how to master these energy mindfulness techniques, as well as just learning how to relax more, how to use different types of techniques, breathing, imagination, so on. And they also provided kind of a theoretical framework that helped to make sense of the experiences. And it's great. It's a nonprofit, volunteer-driven, and I still teach at IAC, and that's more, has a strong educational mission. They also, put together conferences, which is great because then you see like a dialogue with other approaches and so on, other researchers. And they conduct really cutting edge research as well, like my colleague Wagner Allegretti was able to study kind of what happens in your brain when you are doing some of these energy mindfulness techniques, and almost by accident discovered a way to detect energy with magnetic resonance imaging. It's fascinating work right there. But and then at Princeton, I really started going with my engineering background, where they actually studied the interference that, or effect that, the consciousness or being can have on the physical world, on physical machines. Small but measurable, statistically replicable effects. So it's really groundbreaking work. So I found my mentors, right, in this space.
Mm.
And it provided me a fantastic foundation. But then, you being part of the world, you start learning about other things, economic inequality, or how workplace well-being or lack thereof, and so on. All these different subjects, that challenges from the day-to-day world, climate change. And at some point I started to feel a disconnect. Like, I have this spiritual world where I'm learning a lot about the nature of reality, let's say. However, how is that actually affecting my day-to-day life? Well, it helped me personally in many ways. For example, overcoming the fear of death. Thinking more about why am I here to begin with, and thinking about life purpose, right? And examining each encounter I have in a bigger context now. That might be having multiple layers or multiple levels. So all that was useful to me to re-examine my values, my priorities. But then that inevitably means that you start to re-examine everything in the world around you, and you start to think about whether this cognitive shift, this overview effect that you get from having the out-of-body experience, is that going to affect the way you think about everything else in the world? And it has. I have new ideas about what it means to be in a society, in a company, in a house. It's really helped me to think, have fresh ideas, essentially, right? Have a more innovative thought, and thought that is more based on being and well-being, rather than money and accumulation and excess, which is at the root cause of a lot of the problems we're facing as a planet right now.
Right.
So this nexus is where I'm interested in right now, is having had all these experiences and insights. Now it's more about, great, what do we do with that?
So can I just enter before Marilynn, you Nelson, this is fantastic. In fact, it's taking me to where I think I'd like to go in the conversation, but I'll let Marilynn speak on this question of our ability to affect, Dr. Bruce Lipton's work on the biology of belief, right? The epigenetic, the influence of our thoughts, the influence of prayer, right? The ability to rise to higher levels of consciousness in those zones of love that David Hawkins wrote about. That to me is a fascinating challenge we face. Nelson, last time we spoke is, we're in this world which is really messy and seems like it's unbelievably frustrating at times, knowing what we're capable of as human beings with this ability to love, and yet we find ourselves in this kind of morass and stuck. And yet what you're talking about is so encouraging, and you're coming from it. You're an engineer. I know Marilynn and I might be considered a bit woo-woo out there in our mystical conversation experiences, but I think what you're saying gives certainly me hope, and hopefully the listeners hope. So, Marilynn.
Oh, well, what I was going to say was that absolutely, yes, the experiences do translate to physical reality, and it absolutely does so even more as they progress. After, as someone who's had thousands of experiences over 35 some years now, when you move through more and more and deeper experiences into initiations into mysteries, rites of passage, and deeper and deeper and deeper types of mysteries, you learn more and more about how this actually occurs. So yes, these things do actually alter what we can bring into the physical sphere of existence. Um, Definitely. And one of the things that I was recently being shown was, ironically, Nelson's bringing up, the mindfulness practice and how it shows up on the MRIs. And, one of the things that I work with is mindfulness-based cognitive therapy. And I've always done a lot of mindfulness meditations as part of my practices. And in the out-of-body experience, one of the things you'll see is through the vibrational experiences that you have, if you are allowing the experience to fully extinguish itself,
Mm.
You are going to be bringing the kinds of energy through to completion that are required to bring about constructs into the physical sphere that are often missed because of the way that our society operates, the way that we sleep, the way that we are awake. One of the things I was shown is that many times with humankind, because humankind is, they get up on a schedule, they go to sleep on a schedule, they don't, engage in deep meditation. And then when they do meet, there's so many things that are scheduled, even meditation, even prayer.
Hmm.
And when you're going into these energetic processes, you don't want to be scheduling them. You want to allow those energetic processes to fully complete themselves. And sometimes that can, what that means is that you can be going into this vibrational space and you're coming out of it, and you don't want to force yourself to get up prematurely when that vibration is still present, even on just a low hum, because that low hum could continue for another 3 to 4 hours, and that is necessary to complete the cycle of energy that the eternal is trying to bring in to actually complete a construct down below. So there's a lot of things that we could talk about in terms of the practices that could be even perfected more, so that people would get more out of their practice, more out of their experiences, their meditations, and their prayer times, all these things. But one thing I wanted to throw out to Nelson too was, I was very curious because he's talking about the MRI imaging.
Hmm.
I'm curious if they've done MRI imaging, because it's something I've wondered about for many years, comparing the brains of people who have regular out-of-body experiences to those who don't remember them, and if they've shown any differences. That, because I know they've done that with people who have obvious mediumistic capabilities or psychic gifts, and they've been able to show some major differences in their MRI imaging. I'm
In the
curious.
prefrontal cortex, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm curious if they've done that and shown anything of interest in that area as well. You know what I'm saying, Mark?
Yes, well, just before Nelson, I remember there was a show that here in Canada, David Suzuki did a show with Matthieu Ricard, who's one of the Dalai Lama's closest, monks, and former French physicist. And they put him into an MRI and had him go into loving kindness, right, intentionally, and his prefrontal cortex lit up like a Christmas tree. So we know that, like, if you're in that conscious of love, it's pretty clear physiologically.
Well,
Yeah,
that's amazing.
they have found, for example, when people enter this vibrational state, right, when your whole body is in a resonant state, or when you are a very experienced meditator and you enter these heightened states of attention, concentration, that you have a rise in gamma waves in your brain, which means these are brainwave patterns that reveal communication between distant parts of your brain. So there's more integration, essentially, between left hemisphere, right hemisphere, And also we saw when Wagner, for example, was in the MRI during the techniques, these vibrational state related techniques, that there was not too much activity. Soon after he stopped, his brain started lighting up, the entire brain. And what was weird is that there appeared to be activity outside the brain, like around the head, like it's starting to interfere essentially with the equipment. So it really puzzled these scientists, right? So there's a lot to unpack there. I recommend you can Google Wagner Allegretti's TEDx talk for more information. But where we are picking up from though is, when we talk about these experiences, when we talk about these experiences at a deeper level, one side effect, right, is that the deeper we're going to these experiences, the less and less approachable we become actually to everyone else, in a sense. So that's a bit of a paradox. Because we are trying to obviously have an impact in the world, a positive impact in the world, and at this level we can impact a few people very deeply and help them, go down the rabbit hole, if you will. But there's very few people willing to go there. Let's face it, right? At least that's been my experience. I've taught for a long time, but if I add up all the people I've taught, I mean, it's not nearly as many as I would have liked, right? Just because that's not something that everyone's interested in doing, like on a weekend or in an evening, right?
Or like
because
Marilyn does.
Well, at the same time, though, Nelson, one of the things that I would add to that, though, is like a forum like my own, where people can approach it anonymously, shows us that there's more interest in it than one would think. We recently just surpassed over 2 million site visitors. We're at about 2,020,000. We have one of the most active Facebook pages on Facebook. I've been told by Facebook staff members. We have over 840,000 people on our Facebook page. So
who gonna listen to this? Who gonna listen to this podcast, right? Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Right.
Of course.
So there's no doubt about that.
Well, so there's people out there, but there are a lot of people who also keep it to themselves or do it more privately, because a lot of people tell me too, they keep it private because of their work, and a lot of people have to do that. You know what I mean?
Yes. So surveys do show, right, that maybe around 20% of people have these experiences. They're very common, right? But what I'm talking about is making really like a very strong, lasting cultural impact, meaning like actually beginning to erode, undermine the prevalent paradigm, right? The materialistic paradigm. It's very difficult, right, to give people straight up like the proverbial red pill, like in the Matrix, right? So, like most people, I believe, are not ready to just go jump right into it, right? They will, in other words, if you bring this up at most circles, you will find a group of people, like you said, who are openly interested. Some are maybe secretly interested, but I think most people are going to be either just neutral or frankly just turned off by talk about afterlife and all this stuff. So what I'm also interested in is, okay, I know that we can provide techniques and teachings to people who are very open-minded, right? But then how do you actually approach everyone else, which is the majority, unfortunately? So I think part of the solution there is to begin with the first principles, meaning you could argue whether or not, for example, there's life after death. Like if you have a debate with anyone in society, a scientist, a layperson, I mean, yeah, people who had these experiences like us have pretty much an inner certainty that it is real because we feel like we've experienced some of it and so on. But it is not like a scientific fact that's widely accepted, right? And you could say yes, but the science is there and so on. But the point is, it's debatable, right? Otherwise, everybody would be on the
Well,
same
for
page.
someone like
But what?
myself, it's not debatable. But yeah, I understand what you're saying. But
Right, that's great. But there's few of you, and there's many
But
more of
there's
the
a
other
lot
people.
of me. There's a lot of me,
Mhm.
Nelson.
No, I understand.
There's
I
a lot of
understand.
people like me out there.
but I
There
could
are.
I understand. But if we, oh, my point is just that if we want to help everyone else, which to make really a bigger transformation on Earth, we have
I
to
would,
also find.
I would argue with that
Mhm,
point. But I'll let you make
uh-huh.
your point, and then I'll make mine.
Right on. So also, just one point, it's not an either or, right? Like I told you, I teach these classes to people who are ready to go deeper and so on. But what I'm saying is, I find that it's also relevant to see how we can communicate and help everyone else. And we're doing is to start with first principles, such as what is really undeniable, even to a skeptic, about all of this. For example, is the out of body experience an experience? Well, obvious, right? It is
mm,
an experience. Does it exist as an experience that people can have? Yes. I mean,
mm,
everyone agrees with that, psychologists, neuroscience, and so on.
mm.
Now, is it a bad thing? Is it a pathological thing? Well, there was a time when people thought that this experience was narcissistic and it was basically like a pathological escape from yourself. That's no longer the case. You find in textbooks, out of body experience is another altered state like any other. It exists, and it is either neutral or actually now science has started to come out saying that there are positive effects, such as people who have lucid dreams and out of body experiences, they become better problem solvers. They improve their insight, their creative problem solving ability. There's research showing people having these experiences have a reduction in their levels of pain because they're less, rigidly connected, let's say, or attached to the body for a certain amount of time. At least their attention is diverted, and they have basically an anesthetic effect. Then we know from mindfulness studies that people are reducing their stress, their anxiety. They're also becoming better better decision makers, essentially, right? So, are these useful benefits for most people? Yes. So what I'm saying is that there's a different conversation that you can have with people who are looking at the out-of-body experience and related phenomena as a spiritual tool, let's say, source of insight about the nature of reality and all that. However, there's a very useful conversation you can have, which, by the way, will help normalize the whole thing, right? And make it less of a, oh, that's kind of weird, to, hey, it's like yoga. Yeah, yoga is no longer just, Indian man in robes, in cloths, doing yoga as a spiritual practice,
You can't
right?
do that
It's
though.
now you have
Do that.
women
You
of
can't
course,
do that.
but now you have millions of women, right? Oftentimes wearing Lululemon or whatever, and men doing yoga as like a kinesthetic exercise. However, if you go to a yoga conference and you ask how many of you have had, for example, an out-of-body experience, you'll see a lot of hands go up. So
Really?
that's my point.
Hmm.
That's my point, is that we can do to what yoga has done, right, to that practice. We can do something
Right. But
similar.
I'd like to jump in here.
Absolutely.
What I feel like with that is that what yoga as an exercise has done to the practice of yoga has not actually advanced yoga as the spiritual practice. Will taking God out of the out-of-body experience. You cannot remove the creator God out of a genuinely mystical purification experience, which is necessary to to make this make this experience more acceptable to a secular audience. We don't need to do that. My counter point on that, Nelson, would be that we don't, and ironically, I'm going to come back to this from mystical experiences that I've been shown, and I have an interesting question for you that I'm intrigued, just because it's science related, and I don't know that much about science. But in the mystical experiences I've been shown that the way that we actually bring humanity forward is that we focus on those who are open to the experiences. We move forward ourselves, because it is by us moving forward that we bring that energy forward into this realm, and then others, by osmosis, by the nature of energy moving forward, that this is how we actually assist other souls in moving forward. We can't continually step backwards and go back and rehash the same conversation over and over again of, do out-of-body experiences exist? Does God exist? Is there an afterlife? If we just do that for our whole lifetimes, just to generate interest within a secular mind, we are wasting the gift that has been given us. You know, after spending literally 35 years doing this and going into the really deepest recesses of consciousness, what I have been shown is that, in fact, I'll go to a specific experience. I was shown, Marilynn, you have to keep taking these steps. And I was shown these different steps. And this particular one was years and years ago, but there were 21 different steps of consciousness. And I was like, well, I don't want to leave those people behind. And they said, if you don't want to leave them behind, then keep moving forward, because that's how you're going to bring them forward. It's when we keep moving forward, we're creating momentum in energy. And I do believe that this is the question I have for Nelson when I'm finished here, which is just, I believe there's something in science about, energy in motion continues to move, something to this effect. And this was something that was shown to me many, many times mystically, which is, if you want to bring people forward, you don't keep going back and trying to bring them forward in the way that I would call it on the ground, by continually relating to them on the ground from a grounded perspective. When you're trying to teach, like, at the Out of Body Travel Foundation, we also have, we have the course of study, we have all the books that are available for free download, outofbodytravel.org if you want to check it out. For those who are open and who are ready for the experience, and people have those experiences, but then we accept that there are those out there who are not going to be able to hear us. We understand that those of us who are working in the out-of-body travel state will be working in energy with souls who are not consciously aware of this. We will be doing that in subconscious ways, but it's also the nature of how energy moves, in that when we move forward and as we move forward, and this is kind of what the prophets, saints, mystics, and sages have done since the beginning of time, by leaving behind their words in ancient sacred texts of what did they achieve before they ascended this realm. And I guess, that would be a fundamental disagreement that I have, that watering down, the message of yoga as practice to an exercise program, and taking out-of-body experiences and watering it down from the meaning of life, the path of purification, the way to God realization, to this is going to help you with your stress, is not the way to bring it to the masses. The way to do it is to make it all that it is. And for those of us who are prepared and ready to move forward and into it to the level that we are able, knowing that God is creating this momentum of energy that then pulls those who aren't quite ready at this moment forward in ways that we don't yet necessarily understand or see.
Right. Then definitely we have a difference of opinion there, because, it is my experience, right, that, for example, rather than giving people, or in addition to, right, let's say I have colleagues that, they have no interest in coming to your class or my class or any class. However, I told them, hey, I built this technology with Numascape Studio, right? That's our design outfit. And we created this offshoot called Numa Being, which is the world's first mind spa. So the reason you go into this mind spa is not spiritual enlightenment. You go for those quote unquote mundane reasons, like feeling less pain, having less stress in your life, and so on, right? They have to do with the material day-to-day life, but it makes a measurable impact on people's well-being. So I think it's still relevant.
Oh, it's definitely relevant.
Yeah.
But it's different.
Let me continue if I may. I listened patiently to you.
Yes.
So my friend will come in and will lie down on this recliner. It's a beautiful recliner. Manur is an architect. She designed this gorgeous kind of long chair. And then me as an engineer, I outfitted it with patented technology that basically mimics the technique, or a technique that can be used to reach the vibrational state. We pass sound and vibration through the body, head to toe, and the person moves their attention, scanning the body, guided by this vibration that they're feeling in their body. So in a way, they are getting to do the technique without actually having to be told to do it and guided to do it. And they end up having experiences that they weren't expecting, like lucid dreams, out-of-body experiences, the hypnagogic period. So because they don't go in there with an expectation, or because it's not about believing X, Y, Z. It's just about having experience, try to feel better, right? Get also enter these states, which happen to be very creative states, right? To capture new ideas.
Yeah, very much
so. Some people want well-being, some people want increased performance, creativity. But in the process, they will eventually get experiences that are really paradigm shifting. So they'll end up, at least some of them, getting to the same point, but however, they would have not gotten to that same point right away if I came, okay, guys, this thing is about learning about the afterlife or about the nature of consciousness, because they weren't interested in that, or they were actually rejecting it. But if they came in just to experience something, knowing that they'll have some benefits that will help them with their day-to-day life, then as a unexpected side effect, at least some of them will end up having that profound change, right? So that's my strategy.
That's very valuable. I think that's very valuable. That's very different than what you were saying earlier about, having the endless conversations about whether there's an afterlife.
No, I'm not trying to convince anyone of anything. I'm just trying to facilitate experiences and recognizing
right.
that there are benefits. And pain relief is not a small thing. We have an opioid crisis in this world. Stress is not a small thing. It causes chronic inflammation and an early death. So these are also, it's also important to frame these experiences as, look, they have all these different benefits, and they're open doors. Some people will walk in through a different door than others, right? So that's where I'm focusing my energies lately, while I still teach those more profound courses and so on. I'm focused on creating let's say a case whereby these experiences are useful to everyone. Now, some people will see additional value in them as a spiritual practice, others might not. But
I think the way that you're presenting them is very valuable. Yes, I agree with you totally, and I'm definitely not blind to the fact of the importance of pain relief and also the value of the vibrational states and the consciousness states in healing. Because I myself went through a terminal condition that was healed through pretty much my through consciousness, the out of body travel things that I've experienced.
So we just want to make it more accessible.
Yeah. Can I, Nelson? I'm cognizant of your lunch hour time, and I just want to check what your timing is, because I want to ask kind of a macro question, a strategic question next.
Cool, go for it. Go for it.
So my question, I mean, I'm a macroeconomist, and I actually, full disclosure, I've never, at least not aware, I've never had a near-death experiences, and I've never had a out-of-body experience, though I now recognize that, yes, I've had flying dreams, and, I've been an eagle and all that thing, all those kind of, now that I'm conscious of having had those experiences, so I think I could put up my hand and said, okay, I've had some mystical experiences, but not like Marilynn by any means. Though I just believe when someone, Nelson, you said when someone's had an experience, whether you've done ayahuasca or other, techniques, I simply believe their story. I mean, why would I not believe their story? But what I'm interested in is a macro level, because what I'm exploring now is, David Hawkins' work on consciousness, that if it's consciousness is a logarithmic function, it's very difficult to achieve those higher levels of vibration, the enlightened kind of conscious realms of Jesus, Buddha, and he says that so if our strategy is to move the spectrum, move humanity up that logarithmic function of consciousness, out of the lower vibrations of fear and apathy, which feel right now to be sort of dominant, how do we actually strategically, with great respect for individual volition and choice, shift the consciousness of? We can look at both of our countries. You can look at opioid crisis and fentanyl as a crisis of consciousness, of despair, whatever you want to point to. But how do we, as practitioners, the three of us, strategically affect, right, and hope to raise the consciousness of the planet right now, which appears to be, at least some say, we're in this state of emergency, which I don't actually believe, because I do believe in the biology of belief. So curious to hear from both of you.
My point of view is that if we want people to have a, that overview effect, that moment of insight, that is not something that we can teach per se, right?
Mm-hmm,
It's something that must be experienced. So my answer, is to make the experience more accessible, to make it easier to obtain.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why, with Numascape and Numa Being, we are developing experiences, technologies that would make it easier for people to have the experience, and also show all these day-to-day benefits, so that these practices become commonly used, right? Even if at first it sounds like we are making it banal compared to, what it could be, this great spiritual practice. Because my strategy is that if people consider lucid dreaming, out-of-body experience the same way that they look at jogging,
or smoking, or doing taking fentanyl or opioids,
well,
right?
I'm using a positive
yeah,
metaphor, because these are like well-being exercises.
Right.
They look at them as, this will help me be creative. This will help me have more well-being. So let's teach it in schools. Let's teach it in workplaces. Make it like just a normal thing that everybody does, kind of like yoga, right? Then, okay, for some people it's true. That's all it will ever be. But that's great. They have lots of benefits, right? But for many, it will open a door to actually have deeper experiences which will provide a cognitive shift that will help them see themselves not as a meat robot, right? But as part of nature, as part of the cosmos, have a more planetary and universal view. And therefore, their behavior will be more ecological, more humanitarian, more altruistic as a result of those cognitive shifts.
And
so we need to be cognitive shift facilitators.
Right. And as a measurement person, I know that we can measure and verify these changes in our consciousness, right? Whether it's the food we eat, we can literally measure the vibrational change.
And we can measure the outcome, you know,
measure the outcome. So we can't
how
say
the behavior.
that's right. So impact can be measured, verified. And as Marilynn, you're saying, we just keep going. We have to keep going, moving forward.
Right.
So
And
that's very exciting.
you were talking about using, like, even just the thing of people using fentanyl or whatever and the opioids. You know, you can't remove the important part of the process, which is those who are specifically, you know, trained for the addiction treatment first. But they are incorporating in the mental health treatments, you know, mindfulness-based meditations and other types of therapies, you know, NLP, CBT, MBCT, REBT, and lots of other new therapies and older therapies that are being modified to kind of move forward. And a lot of these types of things are helping people to move forward into some, you know, some processes where they are learning meditation. You know, one of the things that I think is really important is people learn mindfulness meditation of any kind, mindfulness-based meditation. That is going to help them move closer to out-of-body experiences. It's a big part of, you know, there are processes and procedures that, you know, the things that I guide people with prayer and meditation, that do lead people to have these experiences, as well as, ironically, reading. You know, we have the books that I've talked about before, Come to Wisdom's Door and The Mysteries of the Redemption. They're specially programmed, and people just have spontaneous experiences. We have to realize that there are certain things that the heavens are already creating for us and have created for us, not just with these, but with others, you know, others of these ancient sacred texts throughout time. You know, Nelson is talking about yoga and, you know, some of the ancient Hindu texts. You know, we have some really, really amazing texts from the Hindu tradition, as well as others. These ancient texts, literally, I've seen them so many times in the out-of-body travel state as a stairway to heaven, you know. And these really, the reason they are the stairway to heaven, again, I know that I've said this before, so I'll just give you the short version, but the, you know, because these are the words and the last words of the great masters from all world traditions that they left behind as they were ascending this realm, as they were.
If I may, you know, my wife is from Sri Lanka. You know, she grew up in a Buddhist Theravada Buddhist culture, and I just want to point out, you know, as some people that come from these cultures, that you know, and learn them in close to the original language and everything, that you know, Buddha, for example, also said, no, don't believe in anything. Have your own experiences, and you know, it's not important to believe in God and all these things, right? What's important is to have the experiences, reach your own conclusions, and then apply this to become a better person, to help others. So I want to point out that, you know, it might sound weird, but, you know, myself, if you ask me, do I believe in God? Do I believe in the afterlife? To me, those are not important questions, because what's more important is, you know, how is it affecting me as a person? Am I becoming, you know, how is it going to affect my behavior, my ethics? Like, whether I believe in God or not, like, I have no evidence either way. I mean, I feel like I have personal evidence that my consciousness, my being will continue to exist. So like an afterlife or before birth, right? But something like so abstract, like God, like, I've never met God. I've had, you know, thousands of OOBEs. I've never met, let's say, this divine creator or something. I'm not even sure there was a creation. Maybe things have always existed. These for me are mysteries, and I'm perfectly fine with it being a mystery, right? And I'm more interested in the practical outcomes of all of this. I'm interested. I'm curious in these questions, but I prefer to have an open mind and a questioning mind, and have more questions than answers. And I thrive in that environment. I'm okay with it. So it's just to point out that there's not just one way to look at these things, and we that's why we have these conversations. Yeah.
So right. Our awareness of God does affect who we are here and the work that we do in relation to the humility that we bring forth in the work that we do. It's very important. And
I
the
don't know.
divine,
I've
the
met
divine
people who,
manifests in the outer
right,
body experience,
Mm.
just as does, you know, the heavens, hells, and purgatories, the divine, the demonic, all of
I
these things.
I think there are a lot of believers, right? People who believe, but then in practice they're less coherent, and then there are other people who are the opposite. So you know, yeah, it's
I think
possible that you.
I think it's possible as
Yeah.
well that sometimes when I was not a believer in anything of this nature before my experiences. So whatever beliefs
Mhm.
I have came from the experiences that
Experience.
I've had, and I have experienced the divine, and so have thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, of near-death experiencers who have experienced
Right.
divine.
I'm just saying that there are different ways of interpreting those, and I would not be, you know,
To the
comfortable saying
near-death
that my interpretation is
experiencers,
better. Just
to
different.
the
That's
near-death
all.
experiencers, and I speak to a lot of the near-death experiencers, to the near-death experiencers, there is not a different way. Because
Mm.
those who have had those,
You have not spoken to all near-death
I've
experiences.
spoken to a
So,
lot of them because
right.
that's what I
But
do.
it's not all of them, I guarantee you, because I also have spoken to many.
I'm sure you
That's
have
all.
spoken to some, but yes,
Right.
the reality is I've spoken to many of them. I'm probably a little bit older than you, Nelson.
Yeah.
And so I've been
Yeah. In this life.
And I'm older than both of you.
There you go.
Yes, you are, Mark. That's true. But not by much. We're pretty close.
I don't have any gray hair yet, but
I do, so that's scary.
No, I respect really and your experiences.
Oh, and I respect.
I'm just
you,
saying
but
that I'm just putting it out there that you know there might be different ways
it's
to interpret
important
things.
though it's important to acknowledge though that the interpretation that a person has of their own experience, and in fact, one of the things that I always say to the people that I speak with about the experiences they're having is that what they felt at the time of their experience, whether it be near death or out of body, is going to be more accurate as to the meaning of the experience than anything I might say or anything anyone else might interpret, because they were there and they understand the particular symbols and this particular things that were being shown to them. So we have to respect, especially we have to respect the individual experiences that
Absolutely.
people have, and the interpretation that they carry of them.
yeah.
Exactly.
So
exactly.
Yeah. And
So
so many people who have had those experiences have met, you know, some aspect of the divine. Many of them have met Christ, and I being one of those who has had many experiences with the Christ, and so I have a different perspective of the importance of that.
Can I ask you both, Nelson? If you have to go, you let me know. But on this big, again, I'm going to take it back to large strategy here. You know, what I celebrate is the fact that is the diversity of experiences. I'm sure some near-death experiences have been there's a variety of those experiences, and the amazing thing is that you know what I've been doing is capturing people's stories, which is their experience of life, right? They could be mystical, and to me, it's so amazing the experiences we've had individually, and yet none of that makes the news. Doesn't make the Twitter sphere. Doesn't make Fox News. We're so caught up in this kind of ridiculous rhetoric of emotion. It seems that, and yet what we're talking about is, to me, so exciting. Such, you know, if someone is listening, a youth is listening, and they're despairing about their future, or they're stuck in a kind of in debt slavery, which we're in right now, you can't help but, you know, feel hope that, wow, if I just explore, you know, your pneumosphere, right?
It's a pneumascape, and pneuma being
you know, someone's going to go, how do I learn more about pneumascape, and where the heck does Marilynn live? I'm not going to give them your address, Marilynn, but you know, but the truth is that this is my reality. I heard Marilynn on Coast to Coast Radio years ago, I don't know how many years ago now.
I think it's about 11 now.
11 years ago, right? Or there's that sacred number 11. But the point is, I thought, and my intuition said, what is a Catholic woman doing on a radio show like Coast to Coast, which is all about, aliens and, the gamut of weird and wonderful things. And so I boldly reached out to her, and she responded to me within the hour. And we became friends. And, some people say, how can you even spend time with this person who's had such whacked out experiences? And I say, because to me, it's just so amazing that we have these experiences as human beings, and that we are not stuck, and that we give a little hope to those who today might feel a little despair on their life journey. So that's why I want to reflect on it. So I just want to thank you and I want to thank the tension also too, as a celebration that, our experience is so varied, and it's okay. Whether we understand what God is, to me, God is love. That's simple as that, right? And one of my vision that's coming to me is, one calling I received 27 years ago in Jerusalem was, let us build the conditions for civilization and economy of love, right? And how do we do that? Like when it feels like against all odds, we have climate emergency, we have, and yet to me, I cling to that. And that's the theme that I like to build on in a practical way.
Absolutely. And that's what, if anybody would like to learn more about what we're doing in these practical kind of applications, they can visit Numascape. That's NEUMASCAPE, numascape.com. And you can reach me there, as well as Minori. And also, if you'd like to read about some of my experiences out of body and other people that I've interviewed, Dr. Torben Risse and I wrote a book. It's called Ordinary People, Extraordinary Experiences. And it's available online and everything.
Yes, I've skimmed your book briefly, and you're in California, right, Nelson?
Yes, I'm based out of Los Angeles. I was born in Portugal, but I live in LA right now.
So here you're born in a Catholic nation, and you have your parents are from Goa, right, from India.
That's right.
And wow, and Marilynn, your website, and we won't tell you, you're out of body, so we don't know where you live. Just kidding.
Yeah, I'm in Arizona, and the website is outofbodytravel.org, and our books are available for free download, so you can always you can go there and check them out. And of course, they're available in whatever way you want them, either on Audible or paperback or digital as well, if that's whatever. And we have a course of study as well that you can take for free as well. That
fantastic.
A lot of people are utilizing and finding helpful. So yeah, I think this is a great discussion to have, and I think it's really interesting also to bring the contrast as well with the East and the West together.
Right. And let's see how we can collaborate. I'd love to meet both of you in person and see how we can work together to make a difference.
Yeah, and I love the technologies that you are working on, Nelson, and
right on.
They're very, very interesting, and I'm going to check that out at your website.
Thanks, and I'd love to hear more about your experiences some other time.
Well, we'll have. I'm sure we'll have this conversation again at a follow up, and but I want to thank you both, and sweet dreams.
Thank you very much. Happy projections.
Happy projections. Well, that was great. Thank you so much to both of you.
Until next time. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah.